Hello, everybody. This is the Chocolate News Podcast. This week's podcast is sponsored by the Ohio Lottery. Keep it fun, Ohio. Play responsibly. I'm your co-host, John Alexander Reese. And if you didn't know, the Cincinnati Herald has been around since 1955 and is the leading African-American owned newspaper in the greater Cincinnati area and northern Kentucky area. And today we have with us our digital correspondent, Andria Carter. How's it going, Andria?
Fine, John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. And we have with us today also Thomas Knott, the Director of Partner Relations for the Cincinnati Music Festival. How's it going, Thomas?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you all doing?
I'm doing great. Now, before we talk to Thomas, who's going to talk to us about the Cincinnati Music Festival, let's get down to some good old chocolate news. So, Andria, what is the chocolate news of the week?
Well, we have a little bit of horrific, well, I shouldn't say horrific, but the aftermath of the shooting that occurred in Buffalo last week. To end my little praise of chocolate news this week, we'll end on a happy note. So I'm going to start with Buffalo. The latest, there's a couple of things that are going on. As you know, last week, a young man, an 18-year-old young man, went into the Tops Market in Buffalo, New York, and shot it up, killing 10 people. And everyone's finding out that he had been radicalized by white supremacy. And President Biden, with his wife, Jill, went there yesterday. He met with the families and then talked about what happened and what are the next steps for the U.S. involving this tragedy. And what's very interesting is that even though we've heard Obama talk about all the shootings that occurred under his administration, Trump barely acknowledged any of this activity, and Biden has picked up the mantle of discussing these shootings. And basically he called it what it is: terrorism. Then he said domestic terrorism, and that he is urging the DOJ to investigate what's going on. I think he's also encouraging the FBI to investigate what's going on, what's causing this, the widespread propaganda that's being spread. And unfortunately, this young man was influenced by this theory called replacement theory. And it's unfortunate that people are believing in this replacement theory. They believe basically you take out one group of people because they fear them replacing you, and which is just not true. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how going forward, how the FBI and the DOJ handle this investigation. And especially they're going to be looking at all of the social media sites that have spread this propaganda information, also urging the replacement theory. Also, Tucker Carlson on Fox News is coming under fire because he's been known to spout this theory so many times. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens as the investigation continues into this matter and see how people react to it. So that's the first Buffalo news. The second is, I think everyone is aware of the lacrosse team from Delaware State University that was stopped on their way back from a game. They were stopped in Georgia, and the sheriff's deputies searched all their personal belongings before they were allowed to get back on the bus and head back home. What is happening now, the Delaware State, in reaction to this event, has filed a complaint with the Department of Justice regarding this. They filed a complaint against the Liberty County, Georgia deputies who stopped the bus, searched it. There was no cause to stop them other than the fact that the bus driver was driving in the wrong lane, and he was driving the far left lane when he should have been driving the far right lane, which is according to Georgia law. And the deputies stopped the bus, searched it, probably thinking that, okay, Black people on the bus probably had some weed, we'll see what we can get. And they didn't find anything, not realizing, as some people have pointed out, these young ladies they're looking at future careers as doctors and lawyers. I mean, in fact, a number of them who were taping what was going on were asking questions. In fact, one young lady had an internship in a law firm and knew what to ask and why, what was the cause for the stop. And then later on, the deputies said that they did not search, even though their body camera showed they searched the buses and their personal items. So they're in a world of hurt right now. So we're going to see what happens as this continues. Georgia's just not getting any love right now with all the activities that they've been going on. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it certainly is.
The next up is as you know, last weekend, there was the abortion rally held across the country and here in greater Cincinnati, in Dayton, Ohio, and I believe another rally was held either in Columbus or Cleveland. And a lot of women are very upset at the prospect of what's going to be handed down by the Supreme Court. A lot of pundits have been saying that we need to be careful with this because if they overturn Roe v. Wade, this is the beginning of taking away a lot of rights that have been sought and approved by the Supreme Court. So this is just the beginning, and this is the beginning of the cry of everyone needs to come out and vote in the midterm elections, and especially women and people whose values, if you like what you have right now, you need to come out and vote. Whether you think your vote is worthy or not, your voice needs to be heard by checking that box. And so this is the battle cry, and we'll see what happens as people rally whoever going forward. The final news, which I'm looking forward to, by the way, is Taste of Cincinnati. And it's returning, not on the banks, but actually back on 5th Street, where it should be, May 28th through the 30th, Memorial Day weekend. And this time around, it's supposed to be bigger than ever. They're going to have over 36 restaurants, 18 food trucks, 300 menu items, and over 30 live acts. So this is going to be a huge party down on 5th Street, which I'm looking forward to, because you always can find some good, tasty food to eat and drink, hang out with your friends, have a great time, and hopefully it won't be too hot, but at least you get to try some new things down there. So I'm looking forward to that and kicking off the summer with a great yeehaw, if I can say that.
Yes.
And I'm looking for some good barbecue, some good chicken, and maybe a tasty dessert. I want something, I'm hoping to find something unusual, something different, and something that will kick the palate up a notch, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this, to see what the food scene in Cincinnati is going to show us.
Well, Andrea, you have no idea how excited I am for Taste of Cincinnati, considering the fact that we haven't had one since 2019, unfortunately, due to COVID. I will always go down there with my dad on Memorial Day, probably, somewhere around after 4 or whatever, to try to cut down the lines and everything. We would get a little bit left of we would get everything that we could, sometimes some of the food stands are empty, but we would still manage to get up some pretty good eats. I think some of my favorites are always Tom and Chi, of course. I know there's Tom and Chi everywhere, but I just like getting some Tom and Chi down there, especially at grilled cheese donuts, and like I said, it's always good barbecue. You even got some vegan places down there too. So, I'm just so excited to have this great Cincinnati tradition come back. It's going to be very exciting.
I'm looking forward because I think what's going to be different this year is the fact that there are going to be a number of food trucks. Like there've never been food trucks before.
Yeah.
And I think the food truck offers everyone a unique viewpoint of some tasty item done a certain way.
True.
Or I think it's going to be interesting to see what gourmet or fine dining has taken to a food truck level. And I'm looking for the unusual. I'm looking for the alternative. Yeah. And, I might be willing to try something vegan. I remember the last Taste of Cincinnati I went to, I discovered, I think it's called the Cajun Bee or the Cajun, I forgot what it is, but it's over in Clifton. Mm-hmm. And I go over there all the time for my etouffee, and it's fabulous, and I love it. And their corn chowder is good too. So I'm looking for some good seafood, some good barbecue, some good everything. So I'm looking forward to it because I missed the Asian Fest because I was committed to another activity. So right. I'm looking forward to Taste of Cincinnati. So that is all the chocolate news that I have for today.
All right. Thank you, Andrea, for that good dose of chocolate news. We certainly ended up on a high note. So now let me reintroduce you to Thomas Knott. He's the Director of Partner Relations for Cincinnati Music Festival. So once again, how are you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing very, very well myself.
All right. Well, good to hear. I'm excited to have you on so you can talk about the Cincinnati Music Festival. And speaking of something that hasn't happened in like 2 years, it's been what, since 2019, since the Cincinnati Music Festival was last year.
Yeah, it's 2019, but it seems like it's been longer than that.
I know, right? It's
But yeah, so
crazy.
we're very excited about being back and being back in the groove and providing a great weekend for the people again. So,
Can you give us a little history of the Cincinnati Music Festival?
well, we're near 60 years old,
Wow.
and so you can take it back that far. And
Yeah.
started in French Lick, Indiana, and just a weekend festival. Mainly, it was jazz back then.
Right, right.
And it was a couple of days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then it moved from Indiana to Carthage Fairgrounds. Was there for a number of years. Then it moved down to Riverfront, the old Riverfront,
Yeah, right.
and where it went under a lot of different names. It was like Cincinnati Festival, the Coors Jazz Fest, not Coors, well, Cool Jazz Festival was the first iteration of big sponsor behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Coors, then it was Nissan, then it was just the Cincinnati Music Festival for a number of years. Then it was Macy's Music Festival, then back to the Cincinnati Music Festival presented by Procter and Gamble. So it's been around a number of years in different iterations. Again, going from jazz and blues to jazz and R&B. From a 3-day event to a 2-day event, back to a 3-day event, but instead of being Sunday, it's now Thursday.
Can you tell us who the lineup is going to be this year?
Well, Thursday night we'll be at the Brady Center, the new venue that opened up right across the street from Paul Brown. So Thursday night, the 21st of July, would be Ari Lennox, BJ the Chicago Kid, and Aaron Ray. So that'll be our Thursday night. So it'll be a little different departure from where we have been in the past on Thursday night. Been a lot of throwback, what we've done in the past, mainly hip hop throwback, the old school. So we're going to move that forward in a different direction. And then Friday we come back with, Jonathan Butler will open, bring back a little jazz.
Okay.
Tony, and Anthony Hamilton and Fantasia. And then Charlie Wilson will close. Uncle Charlie will, bring down the house when he closes.
Oh, yes, he certainly will.
Yeah. And then Janet, for the first time, will be gracing our stage on Saturday. Well, we'll open up with Kurt Whalum again with jazz. Then after 7, Tank, the OJs and Janet Jackson. So that's really exciting, having her on our stage. When you have the likes of, some of the greatest artists, whether it be Luther, whether it be, Aretha, Whitney, and then to bring Canada in, to follow like a Mary J. and, those types. So you start getting those icons coming in. It's really exciting.
Right. Now, I have to say, I'm very impressed with the your guys' festival, because I know that pandemic hit live music festivals very hard. Like, for example, the Bunbury Festival, that was in 2019, but even they still even make a comeback this year. So like, what was the hardest, like, I guess what I'm asking is, how hard was it to like reschedule like all these artists and everything, and like what was the hardest thing about that and bringing this festival back for 2022?
It's always like, even like from 2020 2021, we had belief that we're be able to come back until we couldn't come back. And but the hardest thing is like, when you look at trying to keep a lineup intact for 3 years, it's very tough. Because life happens for everybody, not just us, but for everybody.
Right.
So on Friday, Snoop was in that number 4 spot, and we held him for 2 years, but we couldn't hold him for 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because he got busy with different things, and eventually buying back the label that he was on, and creating his own tour. So we just have to move forward and do what we can to keep an exciting lineup. So we have to go back and see who's available, who's ready to work. And then it's been interesting because a lot of artists who people want to see aren't working this year. And so, you open up a lot of doors and you get a lot of doors closed because they decide they're not going to work because for whatever reason, either they want to spend more time with the family or they're not comfortable getting out there just yet, or, whatever reason. And so there's some shuffling. So holding on to a lineup, is pretty tough. So that was the biggest thing, was securing the lineup, starting with Janet and Charlie.
Yeah, well, they are definitely some heavy hitters. I have another question actually. Is there do you guys get any requests for like any artists to show up to your festival? Like do fans say like I want to see this person, I want to see that person, or have you gotten requests for certain artists to come, or how does that work?
Yeah, we get requests for the different artists to come, whether it be what we do every year after the festival is we do I guess, a poll or survey to see who the fans want to see. And we'll put that out there for a month or two and just let the fans, answer back to us. And then we'll just look at the top 10, that we aggregate of who the fans want to see. We'll also, the big tour groups that we work with, do the same thing with them. They'll send it out to all their clients and come back. And then we look at, our sponsors have input, as well as, different partners here locally. We'll hear from, this Convention and Visitor Bureau. We'll hear from you guys, and who you like to see. So different people will just kind of chime in on what they like to see. And then, we look at that and then we look at, does it make sense for our stage, for our customer base? And we go from there, and a lot of times consensus, like 75-80% of that we come down to are people that we're looking at anyway.
Gotcha. I'm definitely gonna fill out that list because I want to see Genuine. It said maybe we can get him down to the Cincinnati Music Festival. That would be nice.
It's been a minute since he's been here.
Yeah,
Well,
I know.
I think what's interesting is the how you created a nice mixture between the old and the new, and also going back to your roots with Jonathan Butler and Kirk Whalum, which are two of my favorites, by the way. But I think I just like the mix. It's a very comfortable mix because it gives you a little bit of everyone, grow the new audience, maintain the old audience, and also weave in some new people like Tank. If I'm thinking of the right person, right, with Tank, right?
Tank's been around a while. Like the Thursday night is definitely pretty much all new folks.
Right.
But your observation is exactly what we've been trying to do over the last couple of years. Is how do we change with the changing demographic? And you look at, people who've been coming to the festival have been coming anywhere from their first year to their 40th year. And so how do you please someone who's been coming for 20 to 40 years? And how do you attract new people? Because someone who's been coming 40 years may be coming for their last year because they just don't travel as well anymore, or, doing other things. And so how do you replace them? And so you can't replace them with the tried and true artists. You have to bring in new artists who are going to bring in new people. And so that's, something that we pride ourselves on being open to do, and to try and just like get out of the comfortable and get into the waters a little deeper, a little more risk, and who we're going to bring in to strike that balance, because the age of the crowd is definitely shifting. Where we used to have an average age about, anywhere from 55 to 58 was like the average age, it has come down a lot in just a couple of years. So how do you look at that? Because, to someone like Tank, who's been around 20 years, to someone who's just started doing live music as a, fan, that's old. But to someone who grew up with, the Commodores and, that's still young. So how do you strike that balance of like what's old school, what's new old school, if you will, and what's new and hot right now? And with, a lot of the artists are coming out with new music, like Tank has new music out, which keeps them, fresh. And you look at those guys around like Kim, Tank, around that ilk, as long as they keep coming out with new music, they're going to remain relevant, as well as their old stuff that people still love. So, but finding those new artists who blend with them is the challenge that we face.
Well, but what I like what I've seen, because I've been to a number of music festivals in the past, I like the fact that if it's a new upcoming artist, you give them a shot at, some of the earlier slots in the music festival, and you get to hear them early on as they slowly get bigger. And I've always found, there's been always an interesting musician or just interesting singer or things like that, or someone who's hit it big, then cooled a little bit, and then hit it big again, and they come in and wow you. Or you haven't seen them for a while, and then they come back. You always get a good mix of that. And I just have to say, I compliment you, because I've been coming to the music festival on and off since I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And I'm giving away my age a little bit, but I've always liked the mix of music, because it's always, whether it's new or old, you've always been able to keep my attention. And I think that's a compliment, because you have a good way of doing the music. And I compliment you on that.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And, I'm just looking forward to some people. I know their music, but I don't know their names sometimes. Mm-hmm. And like Tank, I've heard him in the past and then didn't recognize him on his new music. So that's what I was a little iffy on him. But I think there's something there for everybody. And Janet, I haven't seen in person since she did Rhythm Nation, but I've kept up with her evolution in the music industry. So it's going to be interesting to see what she does now. And everyone else, After Seven I haven't seen them in a while. But also the other nights are a good mix of all of the music. So I thank you very much for that.
Appreciate that feedback, because that's something we try very hard. It's like, even like, you mentioned off the air that, Fantasia may not be one of your favorites. And that's, like, we look at artists and we struggle with them sometimes, mm-hmm. because, we had them this year, we had them that year, and, should we cycle them out for someone else? And then, you get that survey back and they say, no, bring them back. And it's like, well, everyone says no, but then you say yes. And you got to balance that out too. And it's one thing, like, we like to bring artists in that we know are going to give us 100, 110%. We know they're going to get up there and they're going to sweat, they're going to leave it on the stage. And so that's what we like to see from our people, because that's what, when the customers come in from, it's like we're looking at our demographics where we draw people from. So when they come in from Seattle or coming in from San Diego or Buffalo or, Miami, the four corners of the United States and everything in between, you got to try and provide something for all of them. And we think we do a pretty good job of doing that, because, we keep drawing from those areas more and more each year. So like our attendance from Nevada is going to be heavier this year than it has been in the past, and from California the same. And so that Western, customer is starting to come in just as much as that Eastern and Midwestern customer. So that's nice to see. And that's a tribute to, how they view exactly what you just said, Andria, is that, we're able to provide that mix of entertainment. And the fact that, we provide, 3 artists on Thursday, 5 on Friday, and 5 on Saturday. You can't really get that anywhere anymore, because, you look at, Chicago had, they'll do like New Edition and maybe one other, and it's like they'll charge you $300 a ticket for 2 people.
Yeah.
And so, even though we try and provide a good value for a great show, it gets tougher every year, because, with artists, their costs go up every year. So our costs go up every year because they want more. But, we try and do that balance to where, like, you can get some new talent who's really, really good. And then that next year, they're on a different level. And, you had a hand in graduating them to that level. And then they like coming back because they had a good experience with us. And that's what, if you look at the people that come back to us year after year, some of them asked to come back because they had such a good experience in Cincinnati. Not just, being on the stage, but with the fan feedback and fan interaction. And so it's kind of like an all-around thing. It's like, we provide a platform, but it's the fans who really provide the platform.
I didn't realize that there was such a huge fan base from the West. I always knew that there was East Coast feel and the Midwest, but I didn't realize the West has picked up so much over the years.
Yeah, our still largest, if you look at our largest areas of concentration, the greater Chicago area is still the largest, followed by, you look at the Tri-City, Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton.
Okay.
And then, the Cleveland, Detroit area still is starting to come back. And numbers, the percentage isn't coming back to it. It used to be about 20%, but their percentage is not coming back, but the numbers are coming back and actually exceeded where they used to be, 10, 12 years ago. But the numbers from the Buffalo, Rochester areas picked up, from New York City, from the DC, Baltimore, Virginia, all that's picked up. We've picked up Atlanta, St. Louis, the Carolinas, Florida. So the word started getting, as people like move away from Ohio, they still come back to Ohio. So this is like reunion time for a lot of people because they come back and see family. They come back just for the show. We have like a large contingent in Las Vegas because there's a couple of guys who used to live here, moved out there for work. So they come back with their family and friends now. And so that's like, they speak more about it and talk about it. So that crowd grows. The same thing with, California and Texas. And so the more that, we put out a good product, the more it's out there that, we can actually expand our fan base, which, we've been pretty fortunate at.
Well, I have to say that I'm in that boat too, because my sister's coming from Florida for the Music West Festival, like I said, and she called me and said, "Do you know who's coming? Oh my God." So, I understand about that. The family connection is, especially music is universal, and especially when it brings people together. So I think it's unique and really terrific that it's happening here in Cincinnati, because we have a lot to offer people now than ever before. So, and especially there's a lot going on that weekend too.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot more to be named for that weekend.
Oh yeah, I mean, what's interesting is I have a couple friends. Some of the smaller venues have a couple of artists coming in, and they're on the fence of like, okay, what are we going to do? Because they want to come to see you and they want to go there as well. So I mean, I think you have whet their appetite to see what they're going to do. So I mean, it's a good venue.
Now that there's more things going on in and around the city, that helps. Because before, like, when the festival is really the only thing going on, that weekend, then you have Festival 513, 4 or 5 years ago, when you start having Black Taste on the square. You had the lead up parties, concerts in Washington Park. You started doing more things collaboratively with other people in the city. And, the Convention Visitors Bureau getting involved, things like that. And other promoters doing things in and around the festival, not to conflict with it or compete with it, but to support it. And so that gives an out-of-towner, even someone who lives in town, more options of things they can do during the day. So you're just not stuck in your hotel room or stuck at home. You can come down at 2:00 in the afternoon and enjoy music and enjoy food, and then go to the concert. So it's like a whole big effort from this greater Cincinnati area to be involved. There's different things going on in different suburbs to support it now and things like that. So it's been pretty cool.
All right. Well, we have to wrap it up, but thank you, Thomas, for coming on. Can't wait to go to the Cincinnati Music Festival. I'm certainly pumped.
Oh, definitely. Look forward to having you there.
Well, that's it for today's show, everyone. And I also want to thank Andrea for coming on, discussing all the chocolate news. Once again, greatly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
And once again, thanks to the Ohio Lottery for sponsoring this episode. You can find more information about today's topics and past podcast episodes at www.thecincinnatiherald.com, the SESH newsletter, or on our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. Our podcast is on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. In addition, make sure to sign up for Owning It, our home ownership webinar. And for details on that, you can visit our website. I'm John Alexander Reese, and have a good day.